let's look at why this happens from a yogic perspective. So the first reason that this can happen, and I'm going to give about 3 main reasons, but they can all be happening at the same time. The first reason that this can happen is that we, through yoga practice, bump into a layer in the body or the mind or the subtle body that is uncomfortable for the mind or the body, but most likely for the mind. We may not even realize that we're bumping into this. And we will naturally, without even realizing it, want to avoid that layer. Like we are built to avoid anything that's painful or uncomfortable in life. And you completely get to decide. If you want to back off and do less, you can do that. If you want to stay the course and keep moving through, you can do that. Or if you want to dive in more deeply to get through this layer that for some reason is particularly uncomfortable or wanting to be avoided, then you can do that. You can do more yoga. You can bump it up and get through that hump more quickly. And you get to decide. But that can be one reason, that you are bumping into something that is particularly uncomfortable and trying to avoid it by simply not doing the practice. Yoga, very often for people, can be very blissful at the beginning, specifically or in particular, a blissful form of yoga like spinal release yoga can be very blissful at the beginning and feel really good. And then it can just be a habit that doesn't have all these sparks to it anymore, or it can start to be a little bit uncomfortable whether we realize that that's happening or not. And so it falls away a little bit because, again, of bumping into some uncomfortable layers. The next reason, which is very much related, is that as we're doing yoga practice, we are resolving old vasanas. We're resolving patterns in the subtle layer of the being, really the causal layer of the being. And these vasanas, as they're about to die, will try to surge up and take hold. And this can show up in many ways. So as things are about to clear, suddenly your motivation to do your practice will go away, or seemingly life gets in the way. So suddenly your life responsibilities, be it work or family or social responsibilities and so on, these things suddenly seem to increase, so that the seeming reason to not do practice anymore is because we just don't have the time anymore. And so, or the psychology will get in the way. So anxiety will increase, or depression will increase, or all the self-negative talk will increase. These are ways for the habit patterns that are trying to keep us in a ongoing cycle called samskara of suffering, try to keep holding us down, just as you are in a process of blasting through that trap of samsara, or that wheel of samsara, which is this constant up and down, or this constant rolling of enjoyment and suffering, raga and dvesha, liking and disliking. So as we're about to blast through some aspect of that samsara, some of our karma having to do with the stuff that's been holding us back and holding us down, all of those vasanas sort of take hold even stronger. And it will just seem like, oh, I've just been busy, or I've been too tired, or my motivation is gone. And again, you can let those things take over, let those things take hold, or you can push through by continuing to do it in spite of all of those things. And my trick for, if this is the case, if it's a vasana problem, which can show up like your life is getting in the way or all these things I mentioned, is sometimes to sneak into your practice in a different way. So if you've been doing asana and suddenly you're not motivated or it seems like you don't have the time, change the time of day of your practice. Sneak it in some other way. Or do a different practice. Do a mantra repetition practice or a meditation practice or a walking mantra and meditation practice or a singing practice, singing divine names, for example, a prayer practice. There are many other practices that you can do to try to sneak in at a different angle. It's kind of like when a child is having a freak out, you sometimes try to sneak in to help that child by doing something in a different way, or what we would call distracting the child. So you sort of try to create a distraction or sneak around the issue in another way and then get in that way, because those vasanas are very sneaky. And I see a question, if there is resistance, is it always vasana? Yes. In the most basic way, I think I can answer that question by saying yes, because when we are not being held back by vasana, by harmful old habit patterns that are often, they're like a groove that are lifelong. When we're not caught up in that or held back by it, we are in a state of allowance. We are in a place of, I'll name, if I can keep them in my brain, 4 things. Prema, which means love. Shanti, which means peace. Shraddha, which means faith. And kshanti, which means patience or allowance. When we're in that place, which are these higher yogic states, those of you who are studying soma with me, those are the soma emotions. When we're coming from that place, then we don't have any resistance. Think about if you're coming from all of this or even just one of these to the fullest. Love, peace, commitment or faith, or allowance, surrender, patience. These are all ways to use this word kshanti. Then there is no resistance. We may have patterns there, but they're just patterns that aren't holding us back anymore. Any resistance, yes, is basically vasana, but we give it many different names. We can call it laziness, depression, anxiety, low motivation, negative self-talk, greed, desire, aversion, all of these things that seem to get in our way or hold us back or keep us small and limited. These are all different names or forms of vasana. And we all suffer all of these, which is why these teachings apply to everyone, right? So again, my trick for that, if it's seeming like it's vasana, then sneak in a different way. Change up the practice a little bit. And you'll find that you can come to it more easily and get through this layer or get through these vasanas that are seeming to hold you back. I mean, another example of what would be vasana would just be boredom, seeming to be bored with your practice. Fine, then change the practice, right? Okay, and then the third one is what I would call a change in your inner motivation, a change in the driving force behind why you do yoga. Now, as you do yoga over the course of months or years or decades, one of the things that will change sooner or later, or sometimes multiple times, is the reason that you're doing yoga. So we all come to yoga limited, with limitation and with desire and aversion. And those are the things that drive us to yoga. We come to yoga because we want to get something out of it, or because we want to get rid of something that we don't like about ourselves, be it pain or something else. So that's what motivates us in the beginning. the beginning might last a few weeks or a few months or a few years. So let's say what motivated you to do yoga was pain, physical pain. And then by virtue of your yoga practice, the pain is resolved. Well, then you no longer need to do yoga if that is the only motivating factor for doing yoga. Hopefully along the way, other things start to open up for you in your experience of yoga, where when the pain falls away, now you're continuing to do yoga because of the bliss that comes from the yoga, because of the inner insight that comes through yoga, because of the shanti, the peace that comes through yoga, and so on. So you continue to do yoga even though the pain falls away. But if you're not maturing in your practice, if your practice is solely focused, say, on fixing your knee or fixing your digestion or fixing your headaches, and the practice isn't giving you these other things like shanti, then when the pain goes away or the problem goes away, then yoga goes away too. That's a pretty clear one when we're talking about pain. But there's a sneakier one, which is very, very common for yoga teachers in particular, and for women especially in that category. And that is when our motivation to do yoga has to do with being good. And many of you have heard me talk about the good girl syndrome or the good boy syndrome. And when we feel like a good girl because I did my yoga, and that doing one's yoga practice satisfies this inner need to feel like I'm being good, okay? But then the yoga itself resolves your need to feel like a good girl or a good boy, okay? Because you discover that you are intrinsically good. You are consciousness itself. You're starting to get a glimpse of that. You know yourself to be intrinsically good whether you do yoga or not. Then you don't need to do your yoga in order to satisfy that need that comes from insecurity, to feel like I did this thing, so now I feel good about myself. I was good. I did something good and I was good, so now I feel good. If you feel and know at a deeper level that you are intrinsically good at all times, whether you do yoga or not, then if your reason for doing yoga was because I was checking off something on my good girl list, then you won't do yoga anymore. And what can happen with yoga or with other good habits or things that are beneficial to us, things that resolve vasana, things that are healing and illuminating for us, what happens is you can be in an in-between place where the thing that motivated you to do your yoga is resolved, which is a good thing. This is the result of the yoga practice itself. But the deeper reason to continue with your yoga isn't yet at the surface of your being. Then the practice also will fall away. I hope that this makes some sense. It can show up in many, many ways. Another example, which I think I've written about in one of the blog articles on my website, is I've several times over the years had students come up to me and say, I feel like maybe I'm depressed or there's something wrong with me because I used to want to spend time with friends doing social things, and now I don't want to do that anymore. And this again can come because of an inner shift. If you were motivated to, say, do social things because it made you feel good and you were depending on the social interaction in order to satisfy a need to feel good, but now you generally feel good and satisfied all the time due to your yoga practice, you may not feel motivated to spend time with friends and loved ones because previously your reason to do that was because it made you feel good. Now you feel good all the time, whether you spend time with friends and loved ones or not, or you feel good all the time, whether you do yoga or not. Then you can be in this in-between place where you're no longer doing these things that are beneficial to us, whether it's your yoga practice or spending time with friends and family and so on. And so in that in-between place, you sometimes need to wait for or have a recognition of the deeper reason to do your yoga or the deeper reason to spend time with friends and families that's not motivated by, I feel good when I do this and I feel bad when I don't do it. because ultimately you will feel love, peace, faith, allowance all the time through your yoga practice. And yet you continue to do the things that are put before us to do, the things that are beneficial to you, to your body, to your mind, to your family, to society. You continue to do these beneficial things, not because I'm dependent on them or I feel good when I do them and bad when I don't do them, but simply because it is dharmic, because it is the right thing to do. But before that realization, that recognition, that deeper motivation is at the surface, the practices, the good habits can kind of fall away or be at a still point for a little while. And again, you can change what you're doing, the time of day, the kinds of practices. You can delve into yoga philosophy more deeply instead of asana practice, whatever feels naturally motivating for you to do. And also just have kshanti, have allowance and patience for yourself and with yourself, and know that practice, like everything in life, ebbs and flows. And there will be times when you dive in deeply, like you go to a yoga training, or you go to an immersion, or you do more practice on your own, or you get private sessions. And then that can sustain you for the times when you do less because life is getting in the way, or motivation is stagnant, or all the other many reasons that seem to block us in yoga. And it's okay, because ultimately you are the same, whether you're doing yoga or you're not doing yoga. And there is no punishing teacher or punishing God or punishing influence that is ready to admonish you when you don't do your yoga, or frankly, who is there to congratulate you and pat you on the back and give you a high five when you do it. We do yoga because it is our dharma to do so, because it is beneficial to our bodies, minds, and lives, and our relationships, because it gives us deeper insights, because it leads us to illumination. But not because we're in trouble when we don't do it and we are congratulated when we do it. And that is why I generally don't do a lot of checking up on my students, teachers in training, and clients about whether you're doing your home practice and now you get on my good list if you are, and you're on my bad list if you're not. Because I know once you delve into a certain degree that yoga's alive with you at all times, whether you're washing the dishes or doing a practice or driving in the car, that even the fact that you're being aware of asking the question, why am I not doing my yoga? Or why are the tears bubbling up when I do my yoga? All of that paying attention is yoga. As Swami Dayananda would say, a yoga life is an awareful life. That's all. Okay. I hope this was helpful to the person who asked the question and to anyone else watching. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.